Confident, confident, confident. I can be confident, 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 confident. I can be confident at work.
If you would like to be able to close your laptop, close your workday mentally as well as physically and leave work at work, but your brain just doesn't really seem to let you, then this episode is for you. So, I'm going to share some reasons why I've seen this happening with clients, and I'm going to take you through some questions, some things to think about so that you can do a little bit of self reflection and really deepen your awareness around why this might be happening. Once you know that, I'm going to take you through a process that's hopefully going to help you clean up some of those underlying thoughts that might be creating this problem for you, and talk about building the ability to close your day. Or should I say, close your brain when you close your day. And this is one of those topics where I think if you're seriously going to do something about it, you might have to spend a bit of time understanding for you why it's happening. But first, what might be happening? So, those behaviors that I've described, common things might be thinking about something you said or did when you wake up in the night, mentally holding on to meetings that you had, even though the meeting's closed and it's finished. It might be being or feeling like you're still mentally at work, even in the evenings when maybe you're trying to relax or trying to cook or maybe trying to spend time with family or friends. And maybe it might even impact you in the weekend. For some people, they even find that it impacts them when they are completely away from work on annual leave or holiday. And this ruminating that clients experience is usually something like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why didn't I say that? Why didn't I do that? What if this turns out like that? What did they think about this or that? It usually has a kind of negative bent to it. And every moment that you spend, if you spend ruminating, pulling things apart after the event, of course, is time, energy, and focus taken away from whatever else it is that you're meant to be doing in that moment or you want to be doing in that moment. But it also has a subtle kind of eroding effect on your confidence. Imagine if somebody, okay, this is the voice inside your head, right? But imagine if somebody outside your head was constantly questioning you and being like, oh, what did you say that for? What did you do that for? Should you have done this? Could you have said that? Even the calmest of person is going to start to get a little bit agitated, right? Even the calmest, most confident person is going to start to wonder, geez, like, should I have? Like, am I doing something wrong here? Is this bad? How are people thinking about me? Are they thinking about me? And you might know in your heart that they probably aren't thinking about you and they may not have given it a second thought. They're probably too busy over there thinking about themselves. But when you're doing that kind of ruminating and pulling things apart afterwards, it really does start to erode the trust that you have in yourself. So it is a classic part, I think, of a low confidence cycle, being in a low confidence cycle. And if you don't know what I mean, go to the show notes, take the confidence assessment, and that will tell you whether or not you're in a low confidence cycle and explain all about it. So you may not have spent a lot of time really thinking about this habit of yours of ruminating and going over things and kind of pulling apart your performance or what happened after the event. But we're going to do that today because I want you to, instead of just being in that, I want you to kind of take a step away from that, take a step back from it and see if you can sort of look at it a little bit from the outside. And the first thing that I'd love you to notice is, when does this thing happen? What tends to prompt it? And this is going to be a little bit different for everyone. Might be very particular interactions with very particular people that prompt it for you. It might be when you're in a particularly busy or stressful time. What is it for you? What circumstances? And the best way to think about this is to pull up an example, a recent example. You probably have one. You might tell me, oh, I don't know, it just happens all the time. Great. Choose from one of those all the time moments then, and let's give it a little bit more thought. So I'm going to use an example to help you think through or help guide some of these questions and prompts that I think would be useful for you. And mine is a meeting with one senior person who I'm not particularly familiar with. This is a made up example, by the way. And I come out of that meeting and I think, why did I say that? Why didn't I say that? And oh God, what are they going to be thinking about me now? So I'm going to ask myself a few questions about this scenario. And the first is, if I didn't think about it afterwards, what might happen? If I just let myself leave it in the meeting, forget about it, and move on with my day, what might happen? And what's the answer for you? If you just left things in the moment, closed the meeting, closed the laptop, and just got on with the next thing that you were doing, what do you think might happen? Is there any risk that you can foresee? Is there any danger in just closing out a conversation and then moving on, or closing a meeting and then just moving on? What comes up for you when I ask that? And because we're not having this conversation one to one, I can't respond to what you're saying. But if anything came up for you there, like, well, it would be bad because I wouldn't do this, or I wouldn't check myself, or I wouldn't learn, or I wouldn't get any better, or I wouldn't make progress. Great. If something came up for you, I really want you to think, okay, is that true? Another question, and this is one where you would just complete the sentence. I feel I need to keep holding on to work after hours because if I didn't, here's another one. I keep replaying and ruminating because I'm hoping to feel in control of. I like to be able to go over and over things after they happen in order to prevent. I'm encouraging you here to answer these questions. Even better if you can write them down, but still good if you can do it in your head. In order to notice what's actually going on. You could just try with willpower to kind of white knuckle and add in another behavior over the top of this. So you could try every time I notice myself doing this, I'm going to do something else. Yeah, you could try and do that. But I think before you do that, it might be worthwhile trying to ascertain what is driving this behavior. There's something driving it. So it might be useful to find out what. Whether it's a need to try and control something or prevent something from happening, only then can you look at potentially cleaning up or working with those underlying thoughts. Once you know what's driving it, you get the opportunity to question it. So let's say in my example that I've answered that question. I need to keep holding on to work after hours because if I don't, my reputation could end up damaged. People could think badly of me and I'll never get any better. An example. So we can see that my underlying thinking, the thing that's driving this behavior of ruminating and not closing down my mind after hours, is an attempt at keeping my reputation, you might call it, intact and trying to make improvements. When I realize that, I get what the behavior is driving at. So, really, you want to try and resolve the underlying thought process that is going to reduce the need to ruminate instead of trying to force yourself to stop. Because you might already have tried that. You might have said, look, logically, I know this is not actually doing me any good. Logically, I might know that probably no good comes of it. And I'm just stressing myself out and getting exhausted and wasting my after work time or wasting the rest of the day. But we're not going to go that way around. We're not just going to try and force it to stop. We're going to try and see what the underlying thought process is that's creating it and try to resolve that underlying thought process so that you don't need to ruminate so much. Now, classically, what I see when people go from a low confidence cycle to a high confidence cycle is this is the kind of behavior that just kind of falls away. We may sometimes do some specific work on it, but very often we don't. And because of the other work that we do, it is reducing in the background. It's kind of like a nice effect of dealing with some of those underlying thought processes, which are creating that need to worry. Like, I have to get everything perfect all of the time. If I don't know something, it means I don't know anything, and therefore I have to panic. Everyone is watching me, everyone is judging me. Thoughts like that, those underlying thought processes that are creating the behavior. And if you can get from this episode to understand the underlying thought processes that are driving the ruminating, you are halfway there, my friend. That is great insight. Now, insight doesn't necessarily mean change, but it is a first step. Once you've got that insight, you can start to work with it, start to question it. We look at that element or those elements of a low confidence cycle, like self criticism, like doubting ourselves instead of trusting ourselves, like holding ourselves to really impossible standards, like noticing the negatives and kind of ignoring the positives. If you have generally those kind of underlying habits and behaviors, you can see why there would be situations where you're going to end up ruminating. Almost like the ruminating is not the problem. The ruminating is showing you that there is a problem underneath which needs to be addressed. Now, that is the real work that I think you need to do if you're going to reduce that ruminating, reduce that worrying. But here are just a few little things that might help you to create a new habit. These are not quick fixes. And if there's a problem underneath that really needs to be solved, you're going to need to solve it. But here are a few little things that I have found and I have found with clients to sometimes be useful. And the first thing is having a bit of a closing ritual. So you can physically close, but mentally stay open. So, what could a ritual be for you that ties in a mental close with a physical close? Do you need to do like a brain dump onto paper? Do you need to say something to yourself like, as I close this laptop, I also allow my mind to close? What do you need to know or need to feel is okay in order for your mind to close? You may just ask yourself those questions at the end of the day and jot down the answers. You may spend 30 seconds just noticing everything that has been completed rather than what's been left undone. You may just ask yourself the question, okay, can I trust myself to handle whatever comes tomorrow? And as you're listening to me giving you these little ideas, what changes your feeling state? Because that's what we really want to tap into. So, a couple of times when I was explaining those to you, I felt this kind of, this like internal relief, like a softening. It's okay to close my day. I can trust myself to do this tomorrow. Right? Those are the things for me that would make it feel okay for me to mentally close as well as physically close my laptop at the end of the day. But what is it for you? What creates that relief or that feeling state which allows your mind to close down at the end of a meeting or at the end of a day? And I'm going to encourage you to try maybe a little experiment as you close down today or maybe even tomorrow. And it could be when you leave your work for the day, or it could be when you leave a particular meeting or a particular conversation that you might normally ruminate on or take with you. Maybe you use one of the tools that I've suggested, or maybe you say something to yourself like, I choose to close my mind as I close my work day or as I close this meeting. It's safe for me to leave everything here and pick it back up when I need to. Just an idea. I don't know what yours is going to look like, sound like, be like. The thing that you devise yourself is definitely going to be the best thing. But just see if you can do, say, feel something intentional at the end of a meeting where you would normally ruminate, or at the end of the day, if you would not normally allow your brain to close, and just see what happens. Experiment. If you want to come and work with me, I am very happy to chat to you about confidence coaching and or joining the Confident at Work membership. Head to the link in the show notes, click the link and book a call. And if you're listening to this in real time, then we have a free masterclass coming up for you, and everybody who listens to the podcast is very much invited. It's the Confident at Work 2026 masterclass, revamped and refreshed. And it is 60 minutes where I'm going to take you through the basis of low and high confidence cycles and how you can work this year, 2026, to move from a low confidence cycle into a high confidence cycle. You're very welcome to join us. The link is in the show notes, and I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.
Confident, confident, confident. I can be confident, 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 confident. I can be confident at work.